The great hall of the Galactic Assembly stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of alien species sat in floating platforms, their strange eyes all focused on the small group of humans standing at the center of the chamber. Captain Lisa Monroe stood straight and calm, her hands folded behind her back. She had prepared for this moment for years. Beside her stood Admiral Brooks, a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. The voice of High Arbiter echoed through the hall. He was a reptilian creature, covered in dark green scales, and he stood nearly 8 feet tall. His species, the controlled 40 star systems and commanded the most powerful military fleet in the known galaxy. Right now, he was laughing at the humans. "These creatures come before us asking for membership in our great coalition," said, his forked tongue flicking between his words. "Let us examine what they offer. They have colonized only 3 worlds in their tiny corner of space. They still use chemical rockets for some of their vessels. They require sleep for 1/3 of every day cycle. They cannot survive in the vacuum of space without protective suits. They are, by every measure, the weakest species to ever request membership." Laughter rippled through the assembly. Creatures of all shapes and sizes made sounds of amusement. Some clicked their mandibles. Others flashed colors across their skin. A few simply hummed in frequencies that translated as mockery. Lisa Monroe did not react. She simply stood there with a slight smile on her face. Ambassador of the collective watched the humans with interest. Was a creature ancient beyond measure, with compound eyes that could see into spectrums other species could not imagine. Something about the human readings troubled the ambassador. Their heart rates were too slow, their brain activity too calm. Any other species facing such mockery would show signs of stress. The humans showed nothing but quiet patience. Dismissed the observation. Perhaps humans were simply too primitive to understand they were being insulted. Continued his speech. "I move that humanity be permanently membership in the Galactic Coalition. Furthermore, I propose that their territory be designated as open space, available for any member species to claim." Lisa Monroe finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but somehow it carried through the entire hall. "High Arbiter, if I may respond." Waved a clawed hand. "Speak, little creature, it will change nothing." "The Dominion has judged us by our visible technology," Lisa said. "You have counted our ships and found them few. You have measured our territory and found it small. You have assessed our bodies and found them fragile. Based on this evidence, you have concluded that we are weak." "Because you are weak," replied. "Perhaps," Lisa said. "Or perhaps you have only seen what we wanted you to see." The laughter in the hall died down slightly. Something in the human's tone made several species uneasy. Before could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the assembly hall. Emergency lights flashed in a dozen different colors, each one a warning in a different species' visual spectrum. A technician rushed to Ambassador's side and whispered urgently. His compound eyes widened. "High Arbiter warships have just appeared in orbit around this world, 200 of them. They have weapons charged." Smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Ah yes, I should mention that this meeting was never about your membership application. It was about making sure your diplomatic vessel was far from Earth when our invasion fleet arrived." Lisa Monroe's expression did not change. Admiral Brooks checked a device on his wrist and nodded slightly. "At this very moment," continued, 200 of our finest warships are approaching your 3 little colonies will fall within days. Your species will become servants of the Dominion, and your world's resources will fuel our expansion for centuries." The assembly hall was silent. Some species looked uncomfortable with what was happening. Others seemed pleased to see the arrogant humans finally understand their place in the galaxy. Admiral Brooks leaned close to Lisa and spoke quietly. "Message from Earth Command. The fleet has been detected. General Cole is asking for authorization." Lisa nodded. "Tell her to proceed with Protocol 7. "Are you sure?" Brooks asked. "Once we do this, there is no going back. Every species in this galaxy will know. They attacked our home, Lisa said simply. They made the choice for us. Brooks typed something into his device and sent the message. Had been watching this exchange with amusement. Are you sending a farewell message to your doomed world? How touching. I do hope your people enjoy their final hours of freedom. Lisa Monroe turned to face the High Arbiter directly. She took 3 steps toward him, and something in her movement made him take an involuntary step backward. For just a moment, he felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt afraid. High Arbiter, Lisa said, her voice still calm and pleasant. In the interest of preventing unnecessary loss of life, I am going to give you one chance. Contact your fleet. Order them to withdraw from human space immediately. If they leave now, we will consider this matter closed. Stared at her in disbelief, then burst out laughing. You threaten me. You, a member of a species that could be crushed by a single battlecruiser. Your arrogance is amusing, human, but it will not save you. I am not threatening you, Lisa said. I am offering you mercy. This is something humans do. We give our enemies a chance to walk away. Many species find this confusing. We do it anyway. Mercy, spat the word like it was poison. They do not require mercy from prey. Lisa sighed softly. I was afraid you would say that. She turned to Admiral Brooks. How long until Protocol 7 is fully active? Brooks checked his device. 90 seconds. Ambassador moved closer, curiosity overwhelming caution. Captain Monroe, what is Protocol 7? Lisa Monroe looked at the ancient ambassador with an expression that was almost apologetic. Protocol 7 is the moment we stop pretending to be weak. The hall fell completely silent. You see, Lisa continued, addressing the entire assembly now, humanity has known about galactic civilization for a very long time. We intercepted your communications. We studied your species. We learned about your technologies, your politics, your wars. And we made a decision. We decided to appear primitive. We decided to hide our true capabilities until we understood whether this galaxy would welcome us or try to destroy us. She turned back too, whose laughter had completely faded. High Arbiter, you really should have done more research on us. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, General Cole stood in the command center of humanity's true military headquarters. Screens covered every wall, showing the approaching fleet as 200 red dots moving steadily toward the blue marble that was home. Around her, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, but there was no panic. There was only quiet focus. Lieutenant Danny Marsh, a young man barely 25 years old, sat at the tactical station. His fingers moved across holographic displays with practiced speed. General, the fleet has passed Neptune's orbit. They will reach weapons range of Earth in approximately 4 hours. Cole nodded. Status of our visible fleet. 12 ships have moved to intercept position, as planned. They are already mocking them on open channels. They are calling us brave but foolish. Cole allowed herself a small smile. Let them. What is the status of Protocol 7? A door behind her opened, and Dr. Samuel Price entered the command center. He was an older man with wild white hair and glasses that seemed permanently crooked. He had spent 40 years of his life building what was about to be revealed. General Cole, Protocol 7 is ready on your command. All systems are fully operational. All of them, Cole asked. Every single one. Cole turned to Lieutenant Marsh. Put me through to Fleet Commander Eth. Open channel, let everyone hear. The main screen flickered, and the face of the fleet commander appeared. Eth was even larger than, his scales darker and covered in the scars of many battles. He looked at General Cole with obvious contempt. Ah, a human military commander, Eth said. Have you called to surrender? It would be wise. Your 12 little ships cannot possibly stand against my fleet. Fleet Commander Eth, Cole said, her voice steady. You have entered restricted human space without authorization. I am ordering you to reverse course and return to territory immediately. This is your only warning." Ed laughed so hard that his scales rattled. "Warning? You are warning me. Human, I have conquered 17 worlds. I have destroyed species far more powerful than yours. Your tiny fleet is nothing more than target practice for my gunners." "I see," Cole said. "Then you decline to withdraw." "I do not decline. I laugh at the very idea. We will reach your world in hours. We will burn your cities. We will enslave your people. And there is nothing you can do to stop us." Cole nodded slowly. "Very well, I offered you a chance. Remember that in the hours to come, you were given a chance." She cut the transmission. Lieutenant Marsh looked at her nervously. "General, what do we do?" Cole turned to Dr. Price. "Doctor, tell me again, how long have we truly had faster-than-light travel?" Price smiled. 15 years, General. We cracked it 3 years before first contact. When we realized aliens were real, we decided to hide everything. Our public space program, the chemical rockets, the slow expansion to 3 colonies, it was all theater, a performance for galactic observers. And our real fleet. 3,000 warships, General, each one capable of destroying a battlecruiser in a single shot. They have been waiting in hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, hollowed-out asteroids, caverns beneath the lunar surface, facilities buried under the ice of Europa and Enceladus. We have been preparing for this day since the moment we realized we were not alone. Cole walked to the central command platform. She pressed her hand against a scanner, and a new holographic display appeared. It showed the entire solar system, but now there were 3,000 green dots where before there had been only 12. "Lieutenant Marsh," Cole said, "activate Protocol 7, wake up our fleet." Marsh's fingers flew across his console. "Yes, General, Protocol 7 is now active." Across the solar system, things began to happen. In the asteroid belt, massive doors opened in rocks that had seemed completely natural. Warships emerged, their engines glowing with power that the galaxy had never seen. Beneath the moon's surface, hidden hangars released hundreds of fighters and bombers. On Mars, underground facilities that they had dismissed as simple research stations revealed themselves to be military bases housing entire battle groups. In the cold darkness beyond Pluto, the largest ships of all powered up. These were the dreadnoughts, vessels so massive that each one could hold a small city inside its hull. Back on the flagship, alarms began to sound. Eth stared at his tactical display in confusion. "What is happening? Our sensors are malfunctioning." His tactical officer, a young named, shook his head. "Commander, the sensors are working correctly. These readings are real." "They cannot be real. They show thousands of human vessels. Thousands. That is impossible." "Commander, I am detecting power signatures unlike anything in our database. They're weapons. I do not understand these readings. They are generating more energy than our entire fleet combined." Eth watched as the 12 human ships he had mocked were suddenly joined by an armada that stretched across space. The green dots on his display until they nearly filled the screen. "Commander," said, his voice barely a whisper, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." General Cole's face appeared again. This time she was not alone. Behind her through a viewport, Eth could see human warships in formation. So many of them, too many to count. "Fleet Commander Eth," Cole said, "as I told you, you have entered restricted space. I gave you a chance to leave. You refused. Now you will see why that was a mistake." "This is a trick," Eth growled. "Holographic projections. Your species does not have this technology." "You are correct that our public space program does not have this technology," Cole said. "But our public space program was never real. It was a mask, a disguise. For 50 years, we have been preparing for the moment when someone would try to take our home from us. That moment has arrived." She leaned forward slightly. Fleet Commander, you came here expecting to find easy prey. You expected to find a primitive species barely capable of space travel. Instead, you found something very different. You found humanity's true face. Eth felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was a feeling he had not experienced since he was a young warrior facing his first battle. It was fear. "What are you?" he whispered. Cole smiled, and for a moment, her expression reminded Eth of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "We are what happens when a species from a death world decides to reach for the stars," she said. "We are what happens when every challenge makes us stronger instead of breaking us. We are humanity. And you, Fleet Commander, are about to learn a very important lesson." She nodded to Lieutenant Marsh. "Show them 1%. Marsh pressed a single button on his console, and space around the fleet turned to fire. Commander Jake Perry stood on the bridge of the human battleship Resolute, watching the battle unfold before him. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. There was no shouting, no panic. They had trained for this moment for years, and now they executed their duties with practiced calm. "Weapons Officer Santos," Perry said, "target the lead battlecruiser. Fire plasma lance, low power setting." Maria Santos, a woman in her 30s with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, confirmed the order. "Plasma lance charged to 1% power. Firing now." A beam of brilliant blue light shot from the Resolute. It crossed the distance between the human ship and the battlecruiser in less than a second. The shields, rated to withstand any known weapon in the galaxy, collapsed instantly. The beam passed through the ship's hull like a knife through paper. The battlecruiser exploded. On the tactical display, Perry watched as similar scenes repeated across the battlefield. Human ships fired their weapons at minimal power, and vessels died one after another. In the first 60 seconds of combat, 30 ships had been destroyed. "Commander," Santos said, her voice carrying a hint of disbelief, "we are operating at roughly 1% of our maximum weapons capacity. 1%, and their shields cannot even slow our beams." Perry nodded. "Maintain current power levels. General Cole's orders are clear. We show them just enough to make them understand, no more." On the flagship, chaos had taken hold. Eth screamed orders at his crew as explosions lit up the space around his ship. Alarms wailed endlessly. The stench of burning electronics filled the bridge. "Return fire," Eth roared. "All ships return fire." The surviving vessels launched everything they had at the human fleet. Missiles, plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, and energy beams of every type streaked toward the human ships. The human vessels did not even bother to evade. Their shields absorbed every impact without difficulty. Weapons that could crack planets barely registered on their defensive systems. "Commander," reported, his voice trembling, "our weapons are having no effect. Their shields are absorbing all damage. I am reading no impact whatsoever." On the Galactic Assembly Hall, the battle was being broadcast live to every member species. Thousands of aliens watched in stunned silence as the supposedly primitive humans systematically dismantled the most feared military force in the galaxy. High Arbiter stood frozen, his scales turning pale with shock. He had been so certain, so absolutely certain that this would be an easy conquest. Now he watched his fleet die, and he could not understand what he was seeing. Ambassador moved to a private terminal and began accessing ancient historical records. The compound eyes of the diplomat darted across streams of data that had not been viewed in. Most species did not have records that went back more than 10,000 years. They had records that stretched back millions. Found what was being searched for, and the ancient diplomat went very still. "No," whispered, "it cannot be." The record spoke of a time long before the current galactic civilization, a time when a species had risen from a death world on the far edge of the galaxy. They had been small and weak compared to other species. They required constant sustenance. They needed sleep. They could not survive in vacuum. By every measure, they should have been prey for the more powerful species around them. Instead, they had nearly conquered the entire galaxy. They had done it not through superior technology, though their technology had been formidable. They had done it through something else, something the records called persistence. They never gave up. They never surrendered. When defeated, they rebuilt. When killed, their companions fought harder. They formed bonds with other species that transcended logic. They would die for creatures they had only just met. The ancient records called them the Great Terror. They had been stopped only when every other species in the galaxy had united against them. Even then, the war had lasted centuries and had killed trillions. In the end, the Great Terror had not been defeated in battle. They had simply vanished. Their world had gone silent, and no one knew why. The records listed the name of their in the old language. When translated to modern speech, it meant Earth. Looked up at the screens showing the battle. The humans were not trying to destroy the fleet completely. They were herding them, corralling them, giving them chances to flee rather than slaughtering them to the last ship. The Great Terror of the ancient records had shown no such mercy. These humans were different. They had evolved. They had learned something the ancient version of their species had not understood. But the power was still there, hidden behind calm eyes and patient smiles, ready to be unleashed if they were pushed too far. Back in space, Eth finally understood that this battle could not be won. All ships, he ordered, his voice broken and hollow, all ships retreat, full speed back to Dominion space. The surviving vessels, barely half of the original fleet, turned and ran. Their engines pushed to maximum as they tried to escape the nightmare they had stumbled into. The human fleet moved to intercept. Eth closed his eyes, waiting for the final killing blow. It did not come. Instead, the human ships formed a corridor, an escape route. They were letting the go. General Cole's voice came over the communication channel one final time. Fleet Commander Eth, you are being allowed to leave. Take your surviving ships and return to your space. Tell your leaders what you saw here today. Tell them that this was 1% of our capability. Tell them that we do not want war with anyone. We only want to live in peace with our neighbors. Eth found his voice. Why would you show mercy? We tried to destroy you. Because mercy is what separates us from what we could become, Cole replied. We could destroy your entire Dominion, Fleet Commander. We could burn every world to ash. We choose not to. Remember that choice. Learn from it, and never threaten our home again. The transmission ended. Eth watched as his fleet limped toward safety, human warships standing silent guard on either side. He had come to Earth expecting easy prey. He had found something else entirely. He had found a species that could destroy the galaxy, but chose to show mercy instead. And that, he realized, was more terrifying than any weapon. On Prime turned to Ambassador with haunted eyes. What are they? He asked. What are these humans? Was silent for a long moment before answering. They are what we feared we would never find, the ancient diplomat said slowly. And they are what we feared we would. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly was the largest gathering in recorded history. Every member species had sent representatives. Even species that had not attended an assembly meeting in centuries were present. All of them wanted answers about the humans. President Ford stood on the central platform, his holographic image projected at a size that allowed every being in the vast hall to see him clearly. He was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a calm voice. He had led the United Earth government for 12 years, and he had prepared his entire life for this moment. Distinguished members of the Galactic Assembly, Ford began. I understand that you have many questions. I will try to answer them as honestly as I can. A delegate from a species of crystalline beings, spoke first. President Ford, how long have humans possessed this level of technology? Our scientists estimate your weapons are at least 500 years more advanced than anything else in the galaxy. We developed faster-than-light travel approximately 15 years ago, Ford replied. Other technologies followed. We kept them hidden because we were uncertain how the galaxy would react to our presence. Another delegate, this one from a gas-dwelling species whose name humans could not pronounce, asked the obvious question. Why pretend to be primitive? Why not reveal your true strength from the beginning? Ford smiled slightly. Because we wanted to be judged by our character, not by our power. If we had arrived with fleets of warships, every species would have seen us as a threat. Instead, we arrived as humble explorers. We watched. We listened. We learned about the galaxy and its peoples, and we waited to see if we would be welcomed or attacked. The attacked, the delegate noted. Yes, and now you know what happens when someone attacks our home, but I want to be very clear about something. Ford paused and looked across the assembled species. We did not destroy the fleet. We could have, but we chose not to. We let them flee. We showed them mercy. A murmur ran through the crowd. Mercy was not a concept that featured prominently in galactic politics. Let me tell you what humans are capable of, Ford continued. Our soldiers can fight for days without rest. Our bones are denser than most species in this room. We can survive injuries that would kill any of you. We form emotional bonds so strong that we will sacrifice ourselves for complete strangers. We come from a world where everything tried to kill us, and we survived anyway. We are, by any objective measure, one of the most dangerous species to ever evolve. The hall was completely silent. But Ford said, his voice softening, danger is not who we choose to be. We choose to be builders rather than destroyers. We choose to offer friendship rather than demand submission. We choose mercy, even when our enemies deserve none. On the Dominion, a very different scene was taking place. High Arbiter knelt in the great throne room, his head bowed, waiting for the execution he knew was coming. He had failed the Dominion. He had led them into a disaster that had cost them half their fleet. The punishment for such failure was death. Grand Matriarch sat upon the Dominion throne. She was ancient, her scales faded to pale gray, but her eyes were still sharp with intelligence. She had ruled for 3 centuries, and she had seen many wars come and go. She said, "You have shamed the Dominion. You have proven that our mighty fleet can be swept aside like insects. You have shown the galaxy that they are not invincible." "Yes," Grand Matriarch replied. "I accept whatever punishment you decree." Before could respond, a guard entered the throne room. "Grand Matriarch, there is an incoming transmission from the human diplomatic vessel Horizon. They request to speak with you directly." His eyes narrowed, put it through. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It was Lisa Monroe, the human diplomat who had stood calmly in the assembly hall while had mocked her species. "Grand Matriarch," Lisa said with a slight bow, "thank you for accepting my communication." "You dare contact me," hissed, "after what your people did to our fleet." "I contact you because I want to prevent further bloodshed," Lisa replied. "I understand that High Arbiter is to be executed for his failure. I am calling to ask you to spare his life." This caught completely off guard. She leaned forward on her throne. "You are asking me to show mercy to the being who tried to destroy your world?" "Yes." "Why would you do this? He is your enemy. He would have enslaved your people." Lisa nodded. "All of that is true, and yet I ask for mercy anyway. You see, Grand Matriarch, humans believe in something called redemption. We believe that anyone can change, anyone can learn, anyone can become better than they were." "This is a weakness," said. "Perhaps," Lisa agreed. "Or perhaps it is our greatest strength. High Arbiter made a terrible mistake. He underestimated us and he paid a heavy price. But killing him serves no purpose. It will not bring back the who died in the battle. It will not restore your fleet. It will only create more death." Was silent for a long moment. She looked at, still kneeling with his head bowed, and then back at the human diplomat. "What do you propose instead?" "Spare his life. Let him live to learn from his mistakes, and in return, humanity will advocate for peace rather than punishment. We will not demand reparations. We will not seek revenge. We will simply ask that this war end here before more lives are lost. Sat back on her throne considering the offer. In 3 centuries of rule, no enemy had ever asked her to show mercy to someone who had attacked them. It was strange. It was confusing. And yet, there was something compelling about it. "You truly believe that enemies can become friends?" asked. "I believe that they can try," Lisa said, "and trying is always worth something." Made her decision. "Very well, human, we'll live. Not because I understand your reasoning, but because I am curious to see what a species capable of such strange thinking will do next." Lisa bowed again. "Thank you, Grand Matriarch. I believe you will not regret this choice." Back at the Galactic Assembly, Ambassador rose to address the delegates. The ancient diplomat had been thinking carefully about everything that had happened, and now had a proposal to make. "Distinguished delegates," began, "I have studied my people's historical records, the oldest records in the galaxy. I have learned things about humans that most of you do not know. I will not share these secrets without human permission, but I will tell you this. Everything we have seen from humanity, the hidden power, the revealed strength, and most importantly, the mercy they have shown, has convinced me of something important." Pause to let the words sink in. "I propose that humanity be granted not just membership in the Galactic Coalition, but a seat on the High Council itself." Chaos erupted in the hall. Species shouted in surprise and anger. Some demanded to know if had lost all sense. Others argued that giving such power to an unknown species was madness. But some delegates nodded thoughtfully. A species powerful enough to destroy yet wise enough to show mercy, that was exactly the kind of species they wanted making decisions for the galaxy. The vote was called, and the future of humanity hung in the balance. 1 year had passed since the battle that changed everything. The galaxy was a different place now. Humans walked freely on worlds they had once been forbidden from visiting. Human technology was being carefully shared with species who asked for it. And most surprisingly of all, former enemies had become unlikely friends. Admiral Brooks stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Unity. It was no longer a purely human vessel. The crew included members of a dozen different species, all working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just 12 months ago. Beside him stood his first officer, a young Namda, who had volunteered to serve under human command. "Admiral," said, "we are receiving a distress signal from Outpost 7 on the frontier. They are under attack." Brooks frowned. "Under attack by whom?" "Unknown, sir. The transmission cut off before they could identify the attacker." This was the third outpost to go silent in the past week. Something was happening at the edge of known space, and Brooks needed to find out what. "Set course for Outpost 7, maximum speed." The joint fleet, 20 ships carrying crews from across the galaxy, jumped to faster-than-light travel. They arrived at the coordinates of Outpost 7 to find only debris. The station had been completely destroyed. And waiting for them was a fleet of ships, unlike anything Brooks had ever seen. The vessels were black and angular, covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and move. There were hundreds of them, arranged in perfect geometric formations. As Brooks watched, a transmission came through on all frequencies. "We are the Void Collective," a cold, mechanical voice announced. "We have consumed 47 civilizations beyond your frontier. We have analyzed your fleet and determined threat levels. The alien vessels register as minimal threat and will be processed for resources. The human vessels register as significant. We require explanation. Why have you not already conquered this galaxy?" Brooks exchanged a glance with a. The officer looked uncertain for the first time since joining the human crew. "This is Admiral Brooks of the Galactic Coalition," Brooks replied. "We are not conquerors, we come in peace." "Peace is inefficient," the Void Collective responded. Conquest is optimal. Your species possesses the capability to dominate all others. Our calculations confirm this. Yet you have not done so. This is illogical. Explain. Brooks thought about how to answer. These beings were machines, artificial intelligences that had evolved to consume everything in their path. They could not understand concepts like mercy or friendship. They only understood power. Because conquest was never the goal, Brooks said finally. We did not reach for the stars to rule over others. We reached for the stars because we wanted to find neighbors, partners, friends. Friends, the collective repeated. This concept does not compute. Friendship provides no tactical advantage. You are wrong about that, Brooks said quietly. He turned to his communication officer, a named. Open a channel to all coalition vessels. Let them know what we are facing. Within minutes, the joint fleet had formed a defensive formation. Human ships took the center, with allied vessels on the flanks. They were outnumbered 10-1, but no one suggested retreat. Admiral said, the warriors on this ship are ready to fight beside our human allies. Whatever happens, we will not run. Similar messages came from every species in the fleet. They pledged their ancient wisdom. They offered their crystalline shields. Even species that had once feared humanity now stood ready to fight alongside them. The Void Collective observed this behavior with clear confusion. Your allies are inferior. They will be destroyed quickly. Why do they remain? Because that is what friends do, Brooks said. They stand together. The battle began. It was brutal and desperate. The Void Collective had technology that rivaled humanity's own. Their weapons carved through shields with terrible efficiency. Coalition ships began to take damage. But they did not break. Human tactics combined with alien abilities proved more effective than anyone had expected. They provided targeting data that no other species could calculate. The warriors fought with the ferocity of beings who finally understood what they were fighting for. They used their crystalline bodies to create interference fields that disrupted collective communications. And the humans held the center, their ships absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any other fleet. After 3 hours of combat, the Void Collective began to retreat. Their losses had been severe. More importantly, their calculations had been proven wrong. The mechanical voice transmitted one final message before the collective fleet fled into the void. Warning has been added to our database. Warning reads, avoid the humans. They do not fight alone. In the aftermath of the battle, as damaged ships limped back toward safe space, Admiral Brooks received a priority transmission from Earth. Lisa Monroe, now High Counselor Monroe, appeared on his screen. Admiral, I have just heard about the battle. Congratulations on the victory. Thank you, Counselor, but this was not just a human victory. Every species in the fleet contributed. We could not have one without them. Lisa smiled. That is exactly what I wanted to hear. 1 month later, a ceremony was held at the Galactic Assembly. Ambassador, now the official historian of the new era, stood before the collected delegates to read the final entry in their record of these events. We asked them what they were, read. They told us they were human. We asked what that meant. They showed us. Paused and looked around the hall. Former enemies sat beside former prey. Species that had not spoken in centuries now worked together on joint projects. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. They told us they had only used 1% of their power, continued. We were afraid of what the other 99% might be. Weapons, we assumed. Ships. Technology beyond our understanding. We were wrong. Commander Jake Perry sat in the audience beside a, who had become his friend and partner in training officers from across the galaxy. They both listened as spoke the words that would be remembered for. The other 99% was not weapons or ships. It was patience. It was kindness. It was the willingness to see enemies as future friends. It was the choice to build bridges instead of burning them. It was the belief that every species, no matter how different, deserves a chance. Lisa Monroe stood near the front of the hall, watching the faces of the delegates as they listened. Some were still uncertain about humanity. Some still feared what humans could do if they ever truly unleashed their full power. But more and more of them were beginning to understand. We asked them why they showed mercy to those who had tried to destroy them, read. Their answer was simple. They said that mercy was not weakness. Mercy was a choice. And choosing not to destroy when you have the power to do so, that is the greatest strength of all. Closed the historical record and looked up at the assembled species one final time. Let this record stand as testimony to what humanity taught us. True power is not the ability to destroy. True power is the wisdom to choose something better. The humans came to us pretending to be weak. They revealed themselves to be the strongest species the galaxy has ever known. His compound eyes swept across the hall one final time. And they used that strength to teach us how to be better. The hall erupted in applause, not just from humans but from every species present. Even the delegation, led by a reformed, joined in. From the death world called Earth, humanity had come to the stars. They had hidden their power, revealed it when necessary, and then done something no one expected. They had used that power to make friends. And that, as the galaxy would learn, was just the beginning.